Hello again. Star Wars Genesis. We're getting some attention out there. The 8.2 video especially has been doing really well. I don't know if it was a thumbnail or maybe because I talked in it or just the way I showcased it, but what I do know is I gotta keep that style going, or at least try to. And honestly, it's kind of relieving in a weird way, just talking about everything I did in the update and having people hear my thoughts and reasoning behind each change rather than having you guys just read the patch notes on the website. It's like a reward in a weird way. But anyways, biggest thing in 8.3 is going to be the main quest revamp. So for those of you who don't know, the Yuzon Vong main story was actually one of the first mods I started working on, going all the way back to V4 and V3. When I played through it more recently though, there was a lot of stuff I wasn't really a fan of, like it wasn't up to my caliber anymore, or not caliber, fucking standards, and the story only really kicked off at the midpoint. The beginning was pretty rough and it was very similar to vanilla, to the point that people thought their install was bugged. Like Sarah was asking you about visions and stuff, and people were rightfully confused about it because you start Genesis with an artifact. There is no vision yet. So yeah, I took a step back and established a sort of universal backstory for everyone starting anew. Basically, whoever you are, you somehow managed to get this artifact in your inventory, and all you know is that this random group in Coruscant is interested in it and is possibly going to pay you credits for it. So you start off with a quest for it now, and you go there, talk a bit, and ultimately the two choices you can make are just sell them the artifact for 10,000 credits and pass on joining them for the main story, or agree to join them and go through the whole shit show that happens after. Beyond that, I also completely rewrote nearly all the one-on-one companion dialogues, which was about 1,000 voice lines. And I don't know, of course I'm going to be biased because I'm the writer, but I really feel like these conversations, especially in the end game, bring a lot of new depth to these existing characters. And a lot of them now also lead back into new gameplay mechanics out of Genesis, like the black market, secret locations, new crafting tables, etc. Some of these conversations are tough, man, because I don't want it to be a vanilla conversation with Star Wars terms. I'm completely rewriting every single player choice in it and each NPC response. So the only vanilla part that's actually remaining is just the skeleton at this point, which is like a typical conversation skeleton any RPG has, you know? Just one conversation, for example, with Sarah can take up to 8 hours to, like, the whole process of mapping out the initial conversation and all the branching paths, rewriting it so it's a little more meaningful, generating the voices for it, and then the actual modding process of converting the audio, replacing it, then going in and changing the subtitles and everything. Some people see that the project uses AI voices and automatically label it as low effort. I mean, whatever. They can call it what they want. I'm not going to try to convince them otherwise and get into all that. But at least try to sympathize with the fact that I'm already spending 8 hours on a single conversation, and I have dozens of conversations to do for multiple stories. And I'm also maintaining the project as a whole. I mentally can't add managing dozens of voice actors to the giant list of responsibilities I already have. It's a choice, I'll admit, but it's also not really a choice, because we all know what the alternative is. The project would go from something that can be amazing in just only 2 to 3 years to something that's going to be forgotten and outdated by the time it's fully finished, maybe 10, 15 years from now instead. However, on that note, I do want to quickly emphasize I'm specifically talking about me here. We have amazing volunteers like Luigi who do work with real voice actors on an almost daily basis and get them into Genesis. Without him, we would have thousands of less voice lines at this point. Voice lines are his expertise, and he came in out of nowhere, did the job, no questions asked, and he's been doing it ever since. So if we had more people like him, the project will be in a lot better state, but we only have one Luigi. So if you're a voice actor, don't be discouraged by what I said. There is a casting call link on our website you can apply to and possibly get added into Genesis in the near future. But anyways, back to the main story revamp. With all the one-on-one companion dialogue rewritten, there was some solid closure to the story now. Additionally, instead of there being a pop-up like in 8.2 telling you not to do New Game Plus because it would break Genesis and boom, that's that, the main story is over, there is now an actual lore, accurate narrative around why New Game Plus isn't supported. I don't want to spoil anything obviously, but you are very much told straight to your face to not do New Game Plus, basically. And there's lots of implications involved in it. So if you're someone that did the Genesis main story a few versions ago and you haven't done it since, this is honestly the best time to play through it again. It's going to be a completely different new experience. On top of all that, I wanted to make the Vong armor a bit more relevant. Everyone is always bringing up that Genesis is basically a Mandalorian power fantasy simulator because the strongest armor is pure Beskar Mandalorian armor. The armor variety is there, we have hundreds of armors, but we have a small variety of absolute best armors. So, as of 8.3, we have 3 unique variants of Vong armor with their own perks, and now there's no helmet or backpack attached to this armor anymore like how the vanilla game is. It's just an armor you can wear and mix and match with everything. I also wanted to make these armors a bit more interesting to get. And then I had a sort of 2 birds, 1 stone idea. For the longest time, I hated the fact that the vanilla game loop to be able to craft something is to invest your perk points into, let's say, gastronomy. Then you unlock the ability to research how to make a specific food. Then you unlock the recipe after doing that research to make that food. That is just fake content as plain as day. It's just a pointless extra step they added, and I think research should be a lot more meaningful than that. So what I did was replace both the food and medicine categories with exotic metals and biotechnology, and these are both categories that are of course going to expand over time as Genesis develops, outside of just Vong armor and Beskar armor. What I did with the food and medicine is that instead of there being a research requirement to craft high level stuff, there is now instead a perk requirement to them at their respective workbenches. Outside of the main story, I set up a lot of progression stuff too. The days of finding Mandalorian armor in shops or mannequins are over. The stuff you'll find in shops now is pretty grounded, and it's mainly going to be low to mid scavenger-esque gear. This is a big foundational change because for the longest time, the way the vanilla shops were set up was a clusterfuck by Bethesda. I instead now have 2 giant lists of what you would consider common and common helmets that were handpicked, and these lists are what the vendors and random mannequins now pull from. In the black market, however, you might find some Mandalorian helmets on the rare occasion. In conjunction with that, we also have a bunch of blasters added to the black market, and they're unique to the black market. So you won't encounter enemies with these blasters, and because of that, we have the luxury of making these a little stronger than the typical blaster because it's a guarantee that you're going to be the only person that uses it and not some enemy that's going to randomly one-shot you with it. A big complaint I often see is that all the blasters feel the same, and we've been sort of balancing away from that slowly. Mojo, the guy that made our optional lightsaber mod, helped us with that. So now, for example, we have some blasters with some unique effects, and we're definitely going to expand on that over time. Funny enough, I actually accidentally discovered this blue particle impact effect, for example, and it just fit perfectly with all the blue volted blasters. In the future, we're going to try to get the same effect in different colors like green and yellow, with some help from talented people and scripters and effect people like Mojo, as well as some other stuff with effects. Just a lot of cool stuff going on, basically. This is what fun experiments is what I would call them. Is if it doesn't work out, whatever we tried. If it does work out, then hell yeah, we got a new toy you guys can play with. And then one of the last balance changes I made right before 8.3 was with ATSTs. I hated the fact that they weren't really a threat in 8.2. You basically saw one and it was free XP. Every other blaster shot pretty much made them flinch, and they would get stagger locked with no outplay. Now it's going to be a little on the other extreme end of it. There's no more stagger animations anymore, no more grenade spam, which is a positive for you. Instead, they have nearly 30 times more HP, and they do actual damage now, which is obviously a negative for you. They are what I would call a power fantasy wake-up call, in the same sense that all the Sith bosses that I'm eventually going to add to Shattered Space will be too. You very much experience a power fantasy in Genesis during in-game, and I don't want to take that feeling away from you guys, but at the same time, I want that state you reach to take longer to achieve, so it's more rewarding. Because when you do reach it, it's very apparent that you're the strongest person in the room most of the time, and during the times you're not the strongest in the room, there is still outplay potential from being the second strongest, based on the idea that you're smarter tactically. Kind of like how Boba Fett, to your typical person in the Star Wars universe, is scary as fuck, but compared to your typical Jedi, he's technically outmatched, and yet he's known for killing and beating most Jedi. It's that kind of situation. But anyways, beyond balance and progression though, I'd say I did a decent amount of Star Warsification this update. I actually ended up just removing a lot of the vanilla signs from the game, like Hope Tech, Taio, stuff like that. My reasoning behind this is that the signs being there now is more out of place and immersion breaking than the signs not being there at all. Like, if you come into this room right now, it looks perfectly normal, right? I wouldn't even say there's an immersion being broken in this room in regards to the walls and stuff. You would never know that there was a sign here. And then outside of all this, I also did a decent amount of HUD editing, which is always a pain in the ass. But I took a lot of design inspiration from other Star Wars games and got them in to replace the generic Starfield symbols and stuff. Mainly in these menus and also when you level up. So all in one, just another update where it's less Starfield, more Star Wars, which is always better. And that's pretty much it for this update. Obviously there's countless minor changes too, which overall add up to something big altogether. But I'm not going to sit here and list all those out. That's not really what this is for. If you're interested in that, they're all in the patch notes. But basically tons of bug fixes, some new armors, perk changes, string changes, etc. Next priority, I promise you, is the Rebel storyline. I got sidetracked yet again this time, but to be fair, I think these main story changes were far more important. And I'm at least glad I got some actual story stuff done this time. Lots of big things planned. It's just like another weight off my shoulder knowing that every new Genesis user at this point is playing a nearly fully converted main story with a beginning, middle, and end now. And I'm sure I'll feel the same way when I complete the Rebel storyline too, like just another weight off my shoulder. And every other story after that. I've pretty much felt this way every single update where I'm like, damn, I should really release this update because there's so many people playing Genesis and downloading it like on a daily basis, and there are probably people in there that are never gonna play it again because that's just how their personality is. And I'm saying that because I'm like that too. I don't like replaying games, and I almost never do. So I want all those people that are like me to at least have the best experience possible for their first and only playthrough, you know? There's a saying in my native language where we say, I'll rest when I'm dead, basically. And that kind of applies here. I'll rest when my job is done, I'll rest when all the stories are complete, all the NPCs, all the crowds, etc. Because really, after a certain point, we're going to transition from updates to DLCs. DLCs in the sense that it's all new content being added, like a Star Wars planet and stuff like that. It's additive to the game, but it's not necessary. These story conversions are necessary because without them, everyone who plays and experiences the vanilla story in a Star Wars setting is getting a negative experience, versus like if I just add a new planet to Genesis like Dathomir, that isn't replacing a negative experience. It's just adding a new positive experience on top of everything, which means the deadline for it isn't as strict. There's a lot less pressure. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, that is my Yap Fest for 8.3 release. I really hope you guys enjoy it. Hopefully there isn't a major bug or anything. Please make sure you manually save every now and then. Because in 8.2 there was a bug with the rejuvenation perk for some odd fucking hard-coded Starfield reason. Where if you tried loading a save that had level 1 or 2 invested in the perk, it would just straight up crash. And there's no fixing that. That save was just permanently corrupted. And that is actually the first time in Genesis where a save has just straight up been corrupted due to a bug. And most people that had this happen to them, it wasn't a big deal. They just loaded a manual save from like 30 minutes or 1 hour ago. But some people, it was rough for them. They only had autosaves. And how autosaves work in Bethesda games is that they overwrite each other. So one guy lost like days worth of progress because of this bug, and it really sucks. I never want my mod list to be like every other Skyrim mod list on WebJect, where it's like guaranteed to be corrupted after X amount of time. Like, as bad as Starfield is in terms of variety, story, content, all those other things, there is still a foundation here stronger than all the other Bethesda games, which helps keep things light and realistic. Like, we don't need 63 different mods to make trees or roads look good, for example. There's also no need to patch every single mod to be compatible with other mods, because the galaxy is empty. It's very easy to make your mod load order neutral because you can put it anywhere you want, and the odds of someone putting it in that exact same spot is pretty low. It's funny I say that, but if you go look at the paid creation store, they're all somehow not load order neutral. So, I don't know. Like, I'm sorry, but I think the only way I can ever justify a paid mod that Bethesda quotation mark approves is if that mod is completely standalone and load order neutral. Like, it has to meet a certain standard, and I think that's the bare minimum standard it should meet. You should not be allowed to put a $5 mod that thousands of people are going to buy and break your game. The standards for paid mods are just literally lower than free mods, because your primary audience isn't PC players, it is console players who have less variety in mods that PC does, and they also significantly outnumber PC players, so they're almost guaranteed to buy your shitty paid mod. Like, let's be real here. If you are an Xbox player that is still playing Starfield, you are very much a niche that is getting milked by Bethesda with their paid mod store. I was getting a few hate comments from my last video where I called Starfield a bad game, and they were just pointing out how the entire project is basically possible because of Starfield, so I should actually be grateful. And I don't know, that's such a simple, like, backwards way of thinking, because nowhere did I say I'm not grateful for the canvas that is Starfield, but I'm allowed to still call Starfield bad as a whole, which it is, and still acknowledge the good parts of it. For me, the good parts are Creation Kit, a tool that lets someone like me with zero game dev experience make something like this possible. There's also lots of good parts within the game itself that I don't have to sit down and spend days improving. I just have to nudge it a little. Stuff that comes into my mind is like ship building, the resource gathering, the texture, stuff like that. And I'm grateful for that. My thing is, I just don't like toxic positivity or toxic negativity, and Starfield has a lot of people on both sides of that. I'm on the side of I do not think mediocrity should be praised, which Starfield has a lot of right now. But you know what games also had a lot of that? No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk 2077. And yet they managed to fix and update their game to the point where they went from being universally hated like Starfield to being universally loved. So what excuse does Bethesda have? Nothing. And I hope they turn it around. I'm rooting for their next expansion to be groundbreaking and not just a Shattered Space 2.0. Because my biggest mistake I made with Genesis was adding Shattered Space as a requirement prematurely. It's a bit too late to turn that around, but I'm telling you right now, whatever expansion they release sometime in the future is not going to be added as a requirement to Genesis. Even if it's good, I'll even say this, even if it's like the best expansion Bethesda has ever done, I'm not going to go over the $100 like total price point. So they would have to either permanently lower their prices first, which I doubt they'll ever do. And if it's just like Shattered Space, where it's a single new zone and some short story, that's never even going to be added in the first place. Maybe when I literally have nothing else to convert, which isn't going to be for a while, I'll make an optional mod for this hypothetical expansion. It won't ever be a hard requirement like Shattered Space, where if you don't have it, then you can't play Genesis at all. But yeah, on that note, thank you all for watching, and if you made it this far into the video, thank you for listening too. I'll see you guys in the next video.